Good morning, everyone. Welcome to my play space. My name is Kelly, and today you're gonna get to see me work it out. So I have no plan. I did gather some materials that I thought might be interesting and go well together and create a beautiful collage, but I have no idea where I'm going. So you guys are gonna get to see me fly by the seat of my pants. We're gonna go through some things. You're gonna get to see my decisions, why I choose what I do, different techniques that I've got in my mind that I wanna try, that I wanna work out, and some homemade papers that I will show you how I did it. It's real easy. You can get it in your kitchen. So we're gonna go over that and give you some ideas of things that you yourself can use should you want to. So I'm always wanting to think outside the box. So I've got my coffee. Get yourself something fun to drink or a snack. Sit back and relax, and let's begin. So I've got these materials here. Lots of different things, ideas. Now I may use these and I may not. But I just gathered a bunch of things to save you guys the time of seeing me pick through. If you guys want for me to do a video where you see me choose materials for a specific theme, leave me a comment and I will be happy to do that. But sometimes I do the prep work ahead of time to save you guys the time of watching me go through what I consider a lot of tediousness. So we're working out of this big girl today. Now this journal I got on Amazon, and it is by a company called Leather Village. And this is the design they do called the Tree of Life. This is the black, but they also have a gray, a dark gray, that actually has gray pages. This one doesn't have the medium gray pages. This one has the white with the gray tinge. These pages are hand-torn, refurbished cotton, so they're not paper. So it doesn't take ballpoint ink, it doesn't take pencil very well, but it will take watercolors, it will take acrylics. This is the last one that I did in this journal. This one is called, I believe, Chiffon Vogue, I believe is what I named it. So you see a couple of pages that I've worked on previously. So I'm gonna get this girl pinned down because she's getting real thick. So it's getting hard to use her without some preparation. So whenever you have a book that's heavier on this side and bowing up, what you can do is you can put, and I'm gonna put 3 of my little books underneath to prop her up. And then it becomes not perfectly even, but more even. Makes it easier to work with. So I'm just gonna get these things. I'm gonna decide, let me show you some of these background choices that I've got. I like to use these types of backgrounds, but I also have this right here that I've been wanting to use. Now this is off of a bigger sheet that I cut. This is wallpaper tiles. And let me get an example and I will show you. I've got several styles. So here's one that I haven't cut up yet. I got these at the Dollar Tree. I paid, let's see. I got a grouping of them. As you can see, it's just peel and stick. And so what you can do is you can cut the squares. You can cut a series of squares and then just use them on your journals or collages for accent pieces and to really bump up. So they've got many different styles. I've got one that's pink that's got what looks like a mandala design. I've got this silver here, and I've used this a couple of times. So I'm really wanting to use this silver because with her, she's got some gray and sage green, and then she's got a shoe that's got some silver metallic highlights. So there are some grays in here. I've also got this, which is wallpaper. Stickable, peel and stick, removable wallpaper. I've got a big sheet of this at the Dollar Tree. And you can cut it up. You can even tear it and then peel and stick. And we'll work with that, trying to get that unstuck. So we'll see if we want to use that today. So I'm going to use that as an option. So shop your Dollar Trees, your discount stores for things that you can use that are peel and stick. They have many different types. In fact, I have some that look like stone that I've showed in previous videos. And as I use those, I will demonstrate those as well. So what I want to first work out is a background of sorts. And that is the hardest place to start, is your background. Where do I go? How do I start? So I've got this big piece here. Now, one thing about a big piece of thick cardboard, it's really hard to get it in the crease. So I may use this on the sides. Bear with me as I try not to make noise, as I am making noise. Don't want too much white. And you see how there's an image on the back? I can use those scraps. So I will not get rid of these. So see, these scraps are really fun to use to really amp up the vintage kind of shabby chic. So I will save those bits. I'm gonna move some of this out of the way so I don't keep hitting it. And you'll see what this is that I am avoiding trying to make noise with a little bit later. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and get these pieces down, and this is going to enable me to know how to proceed. See, there's this, and you know what? Let me look at my girl again. Okay, so if you're wondering which one to use, like you've got materials that have the two sides to it. And I'm going to take a chance that I'm going to use both. And what I mean by that is I'm going to change my mind. And instead of doing this, let me sit with that for just a moment. Because I do have this that I want to use. This and this go better together. I love this pop of purple. I may do this. So these are the things you need to choose. And sometimes it's hard, but if you sit with it and put some elements on top of each other, it gives you the opportunity to see what it's gonna look like together. Okay, now I did leave this open for tuck-ins, and when I say tuck-ins, these kinds of tuck-ins where you can go in and underneath like that. This is what's called an accordion fold. And I'm doing a very rather crude example of one. I've done an accordion fold in times past in some journal and collages that I have filmed. So this is really crude, and I want it to be crude. I want it to be very old and craggy looking. what's difficult about these pages is you can see they're not even. So trying to get something even on these can be difficult. So I'm going to go ahead and get this piece down first and glue it underneath. So you can do so many different things with your papers. You're only limited by your imagination. And change it up a bit every now and then. Sometimes I will choose opposites, papers that are just so opposite from each other, because I want to challenge myself to see what I can work out. But I like the fact that I've got the same paper but different sides to give me a different look. Don't be afraid to overlap over your crease. It adds interest. And I'm going to get my trusty friend that allows me to get things into the crease and to smooth them out. My other one that I used, I broke it. I was so heavy-handed with it, I guess, that as I was doing one of my videos, it broke while I was filming. And that's okay, things like that happen. And then I found this guy. I probably need to get a bone folder, which I know some people do use. This paper here is a little bit thicker than your normal, so it needs a little bit more glue, more tacking down. But you see how we're creating layers. Layers of interest, layers coming out from other layers. changed my mind with what I want it to look like. Sometimes you have a patterned paper, and by putting it all in one spot, it looks good, but by separating it, you add more interest by putting it on opposite ends. So it really pops up your collage by taking the same pattern paper and putting it in multiple areas. It really makes it interesting. So that was why I changed my mind. If you had done it all in one spot, that is a good thing to do. It depends on what you want the effect to look like. And I have chosen papers that are much thicker than normal. So you're going to see me work with them. And I want to show you something, because this is a way to fix. Do you see this sharp line, this abruptness? What I've tried to learn to do is blend paper without using media like paint. Now, do you see how that softened it? So let's put that back. You see how harsh that was? And by tearing it to a point, it softens it. And that's a technique you can use with any of your papers to get them to blend better. A hard edge is best if you've got it on an edge. If you've got it in the middle of the page like we do here, it's better to tear it to a point so that you get rid of that abrupt sharpness. These are things that I've learned just by doing. I play when I'm not filming, so I can play with technique and see what actually works. And what doesn't. So I do get a lot of fails, but I'm playing and I want to see. It allows me to either fix it or leave it and learn from it. By overlapping your papers, you get them to look like they belong, and that you've got papers coming out from papers. Now, do you see these lines that are created? These create a beauty that make your collages interesting rather than just a bunch of squares. You can make a bunch of squares look good, but you have different ways of doing it to make it look good. It's what's called tiling if you've got a bunch of squares. Now, I want to decide if I want to use any of this beautiful self-stick wallpaper. And I gotta see if I can even get it apart on camera. Sometimes it is difficult. Okay, so there it is. There's that corner. Okay, and I definitely want a corner. So I'm going to soften this, all of this jumbled stamping. I'm gonna soften it and bring in some greenery. But to add interest, I'm not gonna take it from corner to corner. I'm gonna bring it in and give it a border. That's something else you can use to add interest. So you see how that greenery just softens and adds a pop of color. Now I'm also going to do that on this side for balance. So let's see if I can get this one undone, this corner. When you have a straight edge, you want to go straight edge to straight edge. If you go straight edge in the middle, it adds an abruptness that you'll want to deal with later. See the abruptness? So you can, I'll show you how to deal with that a little bit later. But you want to look out for these things. If you leave it as is, with the abruptness, it can look unfinished. You can add stickers to soften. And I'm going to use my fingernail. There we go. Now this is going to go in this corner here. This corner right here. So I'm going to tear it. But I want to make sure that I'm not making it the same size. So I have to tear it to make it just fit within here. So this is what's called a double. And I've even done a triple and a quadruple corner. So you can do double, triple, and quadruple corners. By making it smaller. And again, I'm going to, instead of going straight edge to straight edge, I'm going to leave a border. It just adds a little bit of interest, but you have to make sure it's straight. Now we've got this peeking out, and it adds some interest, but we've got the balance with the two on opposite ends. And then of course I've got these beauties. Now this is one full sticker. So I can either use it as a full sticker, which does not make sense to me because it's too busy. So I'm going to cut it up. And how I cut it up, let's see. You see how I have this double corner? I'm gonna make it a triple here in just a moment. And I'm going to use these stickers to do it. So what I'm going to do is cut along the line that's already there, which makes it really nice to keep it straight. This is hard to get through because my scissors want to stick to the glue on the back. And again, instead of going edge to edge, I'm going to leave a little bit of a border. So this almost becomes a decoration rather than a part of the papers. Now I've got an idea. I was going to use this in the corner, but I changed my mind. I'm going to challenge myself. And I love it when I get ideas to challenge myself, because not only do you not get bored, but sometimes it makes for a more dynamic collage. So I don't want too much of this because it is so bold. Now I can put that here, but you see all this mess that does not look real well. So I'm gonna take it in. That's gonna cover up my rough edges and add a beautiful element right there in the background. Now I'm gonna take a piece of this and I'm gonna put that here. That way I have a balance on opposite ends. So these papers are beautiful. The hardest part is wanting to tear them up because they are so beautiful. I am taking this edge to match. I'm not leaving a border like I did up here because I want a different effect. Okay, now I need to find my girl that I cut out. Here she is. Now I've got this white here. Let me get a sip of coffee. I hope everyone's doing well, enjoying their weekend. Now this is where I cut her out from. And I want to show you guys how you can use these edges. So I've cut her out. Now I'm going to, instead of tearing it straight, which would create a very harsh edge, I'm going to tear it at a diagonal so it softens it. So I could put this right here and leave it as a mirror or a shadow of this, leaving the space for the background. But I don't want to do that because it's a little bit harsh. So that's not the effect I'm going for today. Now, the rule of thumb for scraps is straight edge to straight edge. Otherwise, it's not going to give you the vintage, shabby chic look that you're going for. So do you see how this is a sharp edge and this is a sharp edge? So what I want to do, and I'm not quite sure I want this here. I may want to put it over here. And you see how that blends, those colors blend really well. So I'm going to get rid of this harsh by tearing this inward and bringing it to a point. I'm going to get rid of this harsh by doing the same, tearing it at the corner. And making it a little bit softer. Now, by bringing in that scrap, it brings in an extra layer, which adds to the intrigue of the piece. So use your scraps straight edge to straight edge and then soften them on the ends so that they blend and look like torn vintage layers that have developed over time. This one's a little bit softer. So I'm going to tear it like this. And I do have other scraps over here too. Now to add interest, I want to bring it in and not go border to border. I want to bring it in and give it a border of its own. By adding layers, you begin to blend colors, textures, and you begin to have a piece that is muted more than it was before. Now we're taking straight edge, and let me pull this down so you can see straight edge to straight edge. But if you bring it in, you see how it's torn and goes over all three pieces. So it goes over this one, and this one, adding to the dimension that gives it that much more interest. And then it also softens this graphic. So let me take it off so you can see. You see how bold that graphic is? And then by putting this on top, it softens it. So that's a technique you can use to soften some really bold graphics that you want, but you don't necessarily want all of them. So I'm taking straight edge to straight edge and then bringing all the torn part over all those different pieces. It's junk journalish for those of you that do junk journals. And I was not liking that piece peeking out. So I'm moving this over to get rid of that graphic that was just really not looking good. So by bringing that over and not letting too much of that peek out, it makes it look better. Now I do want some of this to show, so I don't want to go straight edge to straight edge. I want to bring it in a bit and show some of those beautiful graphics, but yet I'm keeping this beauty in mind, and I'm getting ready to show you what I'm going to do with it. I'm only going to glue the edges that are straight, leaving the torn edge unglued because I'm getting ready to show you what I'm going to do. So think about these things before you glue everything down. There's a little bit too much of this graphic. So I'm going to use this over here because I'm going to soften this graphic. I want enough to peek out for it to be beautiful, but I want to also soften that graphic, make it blend a little bit more. So So these are things that just come to me on the spur of the moment. I'm not thinking about them ahead of time. I'm so used to seeing where I can place something because I've played so much that it automatically comes to me sometimes. Sometimes I do struggle. So do you see how bold that graphic is and how sharp that edge is? By putting this here, not only do I soften that edge, but I blend it so that it becomes a beautiful part, and you can still see that beautiful shiny silver. Now what I'm gonna do with this is I've got an idea. I'm going to use my Distress Oxide, my vintage photo. So I'm going to darken that up with some vintage photo, and I'm getting sloppy with it on purpose. I'm getting rid of that white edge. I could have done it before I glued it down, but sometimes, and I'm just kind of whispering it across the pieces, getting some of it on this, kind of dampening those whites, making it look a little bit more vintage. These are ways that you can vintage your papers, and I'm not using a whole lot of pressure. I'm just whispering it on and letting the paper take off what it wants. And look at that wonderful vintage, rusty kind of effect that you get. I'm even gonna bring it over here onto this. Just let it take what it wants. And you get a wonderful random aging effect. You can dampen whites by doing this technique. You can get rid of edges. And I'm gonna bring just a tad bit over here. And what this does, it actually brings a cohesiveness to your piece. It dampens, but all of these little aged, vintage photo looking areas bring a cohesiveness to your piece that you didn't have before. That's a way that you can bring a cohesiveness. Now, if you want to make something look burned, you put your vintage photo first, then you add your black soot to the edge. And that's what gives you that burnt effect. The black soot has to go on the edge because when you burn a document, it turns brown on the inside and black on the edges. So pay attention to things like that so that you can recreate those looks. Okay, now we're gonna work with this area and this beauty. You see how we accordion folded it? So bear with me as I kind of work with it, as I get it to what I want it to look like. I'm just tucking it under. I'm letting it kind of do a little bit of what it wants to do. I want to create some texture and some interest. And it's a very messy accordion fold on purpose. So it doesn't have to be perfect. And you can tear off those edges or just tuck them in wherever you want. I'm getting this placed first, and then I will add glue. And I want it to pop up and be a 3D element. So I've got that there. Now I'm gonna glue it in place. Just gonna add a bunch of glue, because when it's crumpled like this, it doesn't always want to stick. So you've got to add a good amount of glue. Your glue strip applicators, the little clackety, I don't know, glue dispensers, they work well for this because it will allow it to stick down. So now you see why I left that edge unglued, so I can get this little girl there. Now, I've got this little white edge I want to deal with, but I've also got my vintage photo. And I'm making it a little darker than normal on purpose. I want it to look like it's been really aged. So that's how you can use papers to get a very textured look. Another way, and I did tell you I was going to show you this, so let's go ahead and do that. I made my own papers out of parchment paper that you may have in your kitchen. You can even crumple up aluminum foil. In fact, in my little texture basket here, this is where, if I need a texture, I go to this basket. I've got bubble wrap, doilies, different colors of texture. I've got some doilies in here that I've played with some distressed inks that I did on the last. This is some crumpled up magazine as well as parchment paper. And once I crumble it, let me get it out of its little twine enclosure. Once I crumble it, then I take my distressed inks. On this one, I did the vintage photo. So you have to crumple it first, and then you whisper, and it will only take off the vintage photo on the raised areas. So you get this mottled effect. And then you let it dry. And then you can use this in your compositions. You can tuck it in just like we did here. You can use it as a background. You can use it behind an image. You can tear it. You can do whatever you want with it. Now, we're not going to use this today, but you can cut up your parchment paper, crinkle it. I crinkled it about 20 times. While I was sitting watching a podcast, I crinkle my magazine pages and my parchment paper, and it gives me this effect right here. It's a very wrinkled, faded, old, craggy looking effect. And it goes really well if you want to take a bold graphic magazine page. And I learned that from Kelly at Book and Paper Arts, I believe is her channel. Her name is Kelly, but her channel is Book and Paper Arts. I believe I learned that from her. So Kelly, if you ever come across this, I apologize if that's not the name of your channel. I'm going by memory. So I believe it's called Book and Paper Arts. I've learned a lot from her. She's even, I believe, added olive oil. And what it does is not only do you get the craggy look, but it melds the inks and you get a very beautiful, muted, very bold softness to the magazine page. You no longer see the image, but you see all the colors starting to blend. Now it will get all over your hands. When you do a magazine page, your hands will get black or will get the ink on them. If you use olive oil, it gets even worse. So make sure you have some Scott towels or some hand wipes available when you do that technique. And if you guys want to see that, you can go to her channel and see how she does it, or leave me a comment and we can play with it while we film. Okay. I get her down. So you see all the different backgrounds and the vintage photo coming up from the different pieces with her. Now I've got some grays and silvers. So what I want to do is I want to see, this is my drawer with all my different metal elements. And I'm going to move this out of the way. So I don't think I want an edge that's too bold and too bright. It's not quite the page for it. I may want a key, but I don't want a key with a crown. I've got several different designs. I've got brass, gold, silver. These little keys you can get on Amazon. They give you a whole package of them, and not for a whole lot. So I've gathered these by dollar stores. They sell them in packs. For $1.25, you can get 4 or 5 of these. These I got on Amazon, different colors. I got some clock hand pieces from my local craft store. So I've just been, as I see them on sale, I grab them up. So these are some keys, and I've got enough of a variety. Let me try and see if I want to add a key. So I'm just gonna lay these here and let them kind of rest so my eye can see where it would be best to place it. And sometimes I just sit with something and look at something else, and then I can see it right away. It's training your eye to look for balance and detail. It's something I learned in art school when I was in college. And if you're frustrated with a piece, you want to probably walk away. Get your mind off of what it looks like. And then you can see exactly what you want to see. I'm getting rid of the ones that I don't like the way they look. I'm moving them around to see what they look like on the page. This one's too bulky. I may want more than one. This one's a bit bent. Sometimes they can come bent, and this is not straightening out, so I will deal with that later. Let me see if there's another one that's more flat. Sometimes I do want the bulky, and sometimes I don't. Right now, I don't. This glue is amazing, but it has to dry overnight. I put enough on it and let it tack, and overnight it dries in such a way that it becomes permanent. I have tried to remove an element like this the next day to reposition it, and it will literally tear apart the page. That is how well it glues down. So this is Tombow Mono Aqua liquid glue. I get this in packs. It is cheaper on Amazon in a 10-pack than it is to get 2 in the craft store. So I have learned that I can get more of my favorite glue by getting it in packs on Amazon. And I'm just gonna press that down and let it tack, and it will tack itself to the page. Okay. Now I've got these elements here that will bring back a coolness to the warmth that is already on the page. And the reason why I want to add these is for interest. It brings in the silver and the grays and really highlights the gray areas that you see here. It adds a balance. So it balances out all that vintagey color and adds an element of detail because these are see-through. You may see some of the background come through, which is what I like about them. You see how that background is coming through a little bit, and you see how that's torn? Let it tear. Let it tear. Sometimes you've even seen me actually literally tear and ruffle the top of pages. Okay, there it is. Ladies and gentlemen, what shall we call this one? I believe what I want to call this one is Illusion of Pewter, because we have a lot of pewter colors, which is a gray silver metal. So thank you so much for joining me, watching me play and teach you how my mind thinks about things, and using that new ruffled accordion technique that I've never used before. So that was fun. So thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you on the next one.